Well, this one's just a massive, great ego boost for me. Huge thanks to Team NL Racing and to Gina for hosting me on their weekly update TV show. Let's get on with it.
David, or should I rather call you Dave? Whichever you prefer.
You know, it used to be that the only person that called me Dave was my dad, and everyone else I insisted called me David. And then a bunch of my friends coined the phrase Sherpa Dave. So now everyone calls me Dave. So I guess what I'm saying is call me whatever you like.
Well, I'm going to go with Dave then.
All right.
So Dave, welcome to TeamNL TV. We're very happy that you could be here and that you could take the time to give us a little bit of a look into your life, Zwift life, I should say. Zwift, of course, is a big community, but TeamNL has its own small community from the Netherlands within the whole big Zwift community. We know you from your YouTube channel, of course, but we're going to get to that later. You already told us a little bit about your name, but could you tell us where the name Sherpa Dave actually really comes from?
Yes. So I am new to cycling. I've only been cycling for 4 years. And when I started, it was because of one of those drunken bar conversations with two of my friends who were cyclists who started talking about Mont Ventoux and bike racing. And then from there, I kind of looked at my body and said, I'm 120 kilos. I'm not, I need to do something. So I bought a bike and I went cycling. Anyway, 3 months later, they all go to Mount Ventoux to do singlets. And singlets is essentially you do 3 times up Mount Ventoux, each of the major, ascents or each of the ascents. And I wasn't doing that, but I drove the van for them. And so I was driving up and down Mount Ventoux for 12 hours, picking up stragglers, giving them electrolytes, all the things that a Sherpa does. So that's where the name Sherpa Dave came from.
Sherpa Dave. So you've been in France. Have you actually ever been to the Netherlands as well?
Yes. I've been to the Netherlands a few times, only once since I started cycling. I was in Amsterdam, and I actually rented a bike from the Rafa store and did 2 days of riding when I was supposed to be working, but they didn't know. I did one ride that went kind of north out of Amsterdam, along some of the canals. And I did a second day when I went out from Amsterdam, west to the sea, down through the sand dunes and back again. And 2 amazing days of cycling. But I love Holland. I love the Dutch people. It's one of the few places I don't feel tall. You guys are all tall.
Yeah, we have a great bunch of tall people around here. I can recommend you definitely come back to the Netherlands and maybe also look into a little bit of the south of the Netherlands if you like some hills that are not Mont Ventoux. I've done Mont Ventoux myself twice in one day. Couldn't manage the 3 times, but still on my list actually. And maybe I need a Sherpa Dave as well.
That's really funny. I went back to Ventoux, tried the singlets, did 2 ascents, but failed on the 3rd. I did Bedouin and Melusine, and I couldn't do from Soap, but I will go back and do it again. But definitely, I think the south of the Netherlands sounds fantastic.
Yeah, I live there, so I had to make a little bit of a talk about the beautiful south of the Netherlands, Limburg. So that's a little bit about your cycling journey. Can you also tell us a little bit about your Zwift journey in particular?
Yeah, so my first year of cycling, so when winter came, I didn't want to stop. I was still on this losing weight journey. And so I discovered Zwift. And I can't even remember how. I think I was just searching the internet and found Zwift and started riding from there. And at first it was just get out there and ride on the various Zwift worlds. And then I started doing some workouts. And it wasn't until a year after that I started doing some informal racing and really loved it. And from there, I've done all kinds of things. I did an Everesting 18 months ago. That was pretty intense. Yeah, I think it's Zwift is amazing. It opens up the possibilities, not just for winter training, you know, which is where so many people come from, but it also opens up things like, you know, the ability to ride and race for people who wouldn't otherwise do that, whether it's, you know, women's teams that wouldn't exist outside of Zwift. And I know so many of the Sherpa Dave watchers are in women's teams, or people with health problems like me. I've got a heart problem. And so, you know, I'm not going out and doing a local crit where I might have a heart attack or something, but I can push myself to my limits sitting on a bike in my home in a stable environment. And I wouldn't do that without Zwift.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. I have the same feeling. So I started as a good workout for the winter kind of person as well. But then I got so hooked that even in the summer, I actually realized that it gives you a lot more opportunities to actually go out, do that workout, do your routine and do your thing on Zwift in between work, maybe even, which is something that I've done, or during work, but that's also okay for me.
You're right. You're absolutely right. I live in Colorado, which is like a cycling mecca. The mountains here are stupendous. The riding is amazing. I rarely go outside because if I have an hour to do a bike ride, I can be in my home office, which is where I am here, which is where the bike is. I can be on my bike in 2 minutes, do a workout, do a ride, and then be, you know, sitting at the same computer, which is my work computer, doing emails 5 minutes after I finish, or maybe 5 minutes after my shower.
I would recommend the shower first, but I totally get the idea. So that's how you started your Zwift journey. But then, of course, somewhere came the YouTube channel, Sherpa Dave's channel as well. How did that come about?
Actually, it was a progression. I started doing TTTs 18 months ago with a little team called CICC out of Paris Saint-Germain. And they were the same people that I went to Ventoux with. And just doing the TTTs, I found it easier if I knew what course I was on before I did the race. And so I started building out DS notes and rider notes and sharing them with the team. And then a few months later, I switched teams and I was with Rowan King, and I was doing the same thing with them. But I also reached out to Eric Sanjay from Zwift Insider and started building a page sort of notes for each team time trial, which he published on Zwift Insider. And then last February, when Zwift Racing League Season 2 started, I just decided randomly to have a go at a YouTube video. And I think I had 2 subscribers, you know, quite quickly. And then it sort of grew slowly from there. And now we're up to 2,200, and it's fantastic.
Yeah, I know a lot of racers in our TeamNL actually do look at your videos. I'm one of them, actually. So I know from our side, it's really appreciated. I can imagine that it takes quite a bit of work to make these videos every week. Can you take us through the process a little bit?
Sure, yeah. I start the video 2 weeks before the race itself, because the first thing I do is ride and record my riding of the route itself. And I feel like it's really important to do the ride. I know there are bots and things like that that I could use, but the reality is, unless I ride the ride, I don't know where it hurts, and I don't know where there's a little brow of a hill that if you accelerate, you can do something when it flattens at the top. It's not the same unless you really ride it. So I ride and record it, and then I sit back and I build all of my notes, right? So the DS notes and the attack sheet that I do, that allows me to really think about what's going to happen in the dynamic of a race. So that takes a little bit of time. And then after that, it's video production. So that's where I take my recording and I overlay all the notes onto it. And then the last thing I do is my voice over and then add music to it at the end. Whole process is probably about 20 hours per video at the moment.
Yeah, we at TeamNL TV know the process a little bit as well. It can take up quite some time, but in the end, I think we get a lot out of it as well. I know that the community, like TeamNL, really appreciate those videos. Do you feel that as well for yourself, that you actually get a lot out of it as well?
I do. I mean, two levels. I mean, I get a lot out of it because having ridden a race, I feel like when I do the race proper, I'm better as an individual rider. But more importantly than that, the community is amazing. Like the conversations I get into with people, because I really encourage things through the coffee club that I sort of do. It gets people talking. People will send me their race notes afterwards, like their sort of review of what happened, which can be absolutely hilarious reading all the different stories. You know, I think it was Peter Sagan said in, you know, a race of 100 people, there are 100 different stories.
Yeah.
And, you know, in a ZRL race of 10,000 people, there are 10,000 stories. Definitely. And they're all wonderful to hear about. And so the community aspect of it, I think, is the most important part. And I feel like, you know, if I can do nothing else, getting people to coalesce around, you know, the whole idea of racing en masse, it's not something that happens in the real world. It can only happen on Zwift, and you know, to watch that is wonderful. So I get a huge amount out of it.
That is really great to hear. So you're telling us about, okay, actually I learn a lot for my own next races, basically, if I make the videos. How has your season been so far, actually?
Terrible, because the team's doing well. My fitness is just terrible right now. I've got a few health problems that aren't helping, but long story short, you know, I'm middle of the pack C. So whereas last season I was kind of towards the top of C, so I felt like I was earning my keep on the team. But this season, not so well. But what I would say is kind of my philosophy for all riders is not be the best rider on Zwift, because you can't be the best rider on Zwift. But you can be the best rider you can be. And so I feel like right now, for where my fitness is, for who I am, for what I'm doing, I go out and I commit 100% to the race, to doing what I can and being the best, getting the best result I can get out of it. And so at that level, it's been a fantastic season. In terms of points, it's been a terrible season.
I love your outlook on things, though. So just be the best rider you can be, and basically that's something that yeah, I try to aspire as well. Whether that's being on top of the field or whether that's being a mid-level racer and just fighting maybe even to not finish last. It's all a part of the game, and it's all part of, I think, the fun as well. So final point maybe should also be the final race of this season. How are you looking forward to that one?
Well, I'm not racing because we are third in our division right now, and we're not far from second. And so coming into this race, we said we need our sixth best of the squad. And I'm not in the sixth best of the squad this season, so I'm not going to race, but I am going to DS. I'm going to Director Sportif the race. And so I'm really looking forward to that, because I enjoy that part of it as much as I enjoy the race itself. So I've ridden it, obviously, for the recon, and I will be there with our 6 riders, trying to get the best out of each one of them.
I suppose this is really one for 10,000 people racing, 10,000 different stories, because I feel like this is going to be a very, very interesting one.
It's really been quite fun, because I've had a lot of conversations about the whole bike switching thing, and I built the recon video with a very strong perspective that to earn points, to get significant points, the average rider must change their bike. and that's not a viewpoint that everybody shares, but I think it is quite an important viewpoint. But in the week since I built the video, I had lots of conversations, and I haven't changed my view. I think for the majority of riders, that really is important. But there are lots of nuances to it around how and why and when, and how much difference a bike change makes for a top flight A rider and a D rider, because the dynamic of the race is completely different, but also the amount of time you're on that hill is going to be different as well. And so while I think even a top flight A rider will be better off changing bikes, they may only gain 3 or 4 or 10 seconds across that KOM, as opposed to a D rider who might benefit by a minute or even 2 minutes, depending on where they fit in the whole pantheon of riders, 10,000 riders out there.
Yeah, definitely, and it's been the conversation in the WhatsApp groups from our side as well, to switch or not to switch. It even depends on what kind of medium you are using to actually switch,
Yep.
If you have the possibility or not. Dave, you always tell us that you fall into the old category yourself. Maybe you have some final advice for our people in the old category, or maybe even the ones that are not that old yet.
Yes, I do fall into the old category for sure. I think, what I have discovered, so the team that I ride with is Rowan King, and the head coach of Rowan King is Courtney Rowe, who is Luke Rowe's dad, right? I don't think Courtney will mind me saying that he's a little older himself. He's 10 years older than I am, I think. Courtney is an A+ rider, category rider, and is I'm not going to say he's the absolute strongest rider in our entire team, because I think there are other riders who debate that, but he always tops the table somewhere. He's always in the top few riders on the table. And, he's not a spring chicken, as we say in Britain. But the other thing to see about Rowan King is, because, Courtney comes from a certain generation, he knows a lot of riders who are older. And we have lots of riders in their 50s, in their 60s, in their 70s even, who compete and race on a weekly basis, and they do okay. I think there's a couple of things in that. One is that as we get older, I didn't discover riding until I was 47, right? And I'm maybe 48, something like that, right? But as we get older, if we just stop, right? If we just go, I'm old now, I can't compete, I'm not as fast as I was, then I think we put ourselves on a long, slow path to death. I think if we say the opposite and say, I'm getting older, I'm going to get on my bike and ride and do what I can, and not think that I have to overtake that 25-year-old, I think we're in for a longer, better, healthier life. So my advice to anyone as they're aging, and of course everybody is aging, but look back and
unfortunately,
say,
yes.
I think we have to look back and say, I'm going to do the best that I can, and I'm going to get, I'm going to put as much effort in today at 53 as I did when I was 25, and life is richer because of it.
Yeah, I think those are great words to end our interview with. Basically, just be the best rider you can be, whether you're in the younger category, whether you're in the older category, doesn't matter. Be the best that you can be, and have a lot of fun with it, mostly as well, I suppose.
Absolutely. Absolutely. If it's not fun, what's the point? You absolutely have to have fun.
Exactly. Thank you very much, Dave. And we'll hope to see you for next season as well with your recon videos.
You will see me next season as well, for sure.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Thank you, Gina. And also thank you, Sherpa Dave, for this interview.